All right. Well, hi everyone. Great to be here with you all today. Looks like we're just going to have a small group, which is great because we have some discussion time and sharing time, which is always really nice to have with just a small group of folks. So this session is on organic certification in Alaska. We're going to cover today, so I'll go over the agenda here. But first off, my name is and I am the mentorship program coordinator and specialist with this new program, the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, or I'll talk more about this program in the presentation today. Also, just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Anchorage. I now live in Oregon, but it's really great to be back. Get to spend a little bit of time with family while I'm up here, staying with my grandparents. So it's just really lovely to be here with you all. It looks like we might have a few people still trickling in as we get going. All right, so let's dive in the agenda. Here we go. So it looks like formatting gets a little bit off with the PowerPoint, just to let you know. But we're going to start first with just a workshop on organic certification. So some basic steps of how do you certify, what does it mean to be certified, and a little bit on key organic principles for organic production. About some resources for transitioning to organic and getting certified organic. I'll talk about TOPP during that. And then I'm going to step back from the podium and have Marcos Cheer step up here. He is the CEO of Kelp, which is the certified organic kelp operation. So he's going to talk about his experiences with organic certification. And then we're going to leave the last 20 minutes or so, hopefully, for a discussion and a listening session time. So we'll talk amongst us all, and I'm excited to hear what ideas you might have for organic certification in the state, what kind of barriers you might face, what might be some of the benefits of certifying, those kinds of things. All right, so like I said, we're going to start off just going through the steps of certifying. What does it mean to be certified organic? Okay, so what exactly does it mean to farm organically, right? So the National Organic Program, which is known as the NOP, oversee all organic regulation in the country. And they define organic production as a production system that is managed in accordance with the Organic Foods Production Act and regulations, in this part to respond to site-specific conditions by integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster the cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. So some key parts of this definition to pull out is agriculture. Its goal is really to foster that cycling of resources, to promote ecological balance and biodiversity. So, many times organic can be thought of, or people tend to think of organic as substitutions, or maybe just eliminating some materials and replacing, organic materials or natural materials. But it really is more about farming and producing on a holistic, ecological, looking at the farm as a whole system. How can you have thrive through all these different components, all these different ways of management, and really looking at it from just this holistic, natural way of farming that promotes these three primary areas. So we brought up the organic regulations in that definition. And the organic regulations really are the backbone of organic certification. It's what certification is built off of. So the regulations ensure that organic products are produced with specific agricultural management practices and that they are backed by a pretty rigorous certification process. And regulations, there are these different standards that cover the production and handling of agricultural products that are sold, labeled, or represented as organic. So the standards are codified in the Code of Federal Regulations at Title VII, Part 205. And you can easily access this is a screenshot of the regulations up here. And if you're thinking about getting certified organic, this is a really great place to start. It's really important to become familiar with the regulations and the standards to know what's expected of you as an organic producer. Okay, so the NOP, the National Organic Program, as I said before, they are the regulatory program that oversees, and then along with accredited certifiers, they enforce regulations. This slide here, it shows the flow that happens from the NOP to certifiers and then to certified organic operations. Like I said already, the NOP, they oversee all USDA organic certification. They establish and enforce organic regulations, and then they accredit the certifiers to do the actual certifying. So certifiers are the ones that work directly with certified organic operations. They are the ones that issue the organic certificates, and it's highly unlikely that an operation would work directly with the NOP. They pretty much only work with a certifier. There are the certified organic operations into two different groupings. So one is farmers and ranchers, or producers is a term to encompass both of those. And there's also processing, and there are 4 different scopes to certification for when you're applying for certification. So those include wild crops, livestock, and handling. And it really just depends on your operation for what you apply for. So if you're only crops and then selling those directly, right, you would only apply for the crop scope. But you can have all 4 scopes, or you can. All right, so certifiers. I wanted to talk a little bit more about certifiers for Alaska in particular. There are currently 4 certifiers that provide services up here in this state. There are no certifiers located in the state, though. They are all in the lower 48. So that does mean, that you're working virtually with certifiers, and that inspectors do need to be flown up here to do organic inspections. All farms are certified with Oregon TOPP up here. There's about 8, I think, certified organic farms up here, so it's a very small number. And then there are a few, like 4 handling and processing facilities, and those are certified with these other certifiers here. So Washington State Department of Agriculture, or also called WSDA. CCOF is California Certified Organic Farmers, and then here, what's this other one? Where Food Comes From Organic. So those are, I think they're primarily coffee roasters are certified organic, and then Charlie's Produce also has a certification. Yeah, okay, so let's see here. Oh, another way that you can find these certifiers, a great way to is with the Organic Integrity Database. This database, well, one, it lists all certified organic operations. From certified organic, you will be listed in this database. It also lists all certifiers that provide services for the whole country. So in this database, you can go to the search function that's at the top. You can go to the certifier locator. And then through this, you can filter by state. So you can put Alaska on there, and you can see all the certifiers that provide services for Alaska. So if you're thinking about getting certified organic, this is also a great place to start to look for a certifier. And then you can find certifiers' websites, contact information, all of that through here too. Okay, so you're thinking about going organic, let's say. What are those actual steps to getting certified? Well, for most people, it starts with a transition to organic process. This process changes in the amount of time and what it looks like a little bit depending on your current management practices for your operation. For most, and especially any farmer who falls under the like conventional agriculture bracket, so any farmer who's using synthetic chemicals, fertilizers on their farm, they will have a 3-year transition period. So that period starts from the date of the last applied prohibited substance to the 36-month mark where you can harvest your first certified organic crop. And that is also that you have applied for certification and received your certification during that time as well. Typical transition timeline is 3 years. However, if you have followed organic practices on your operation and you have not applied any prohibited substances, and you can show documentation that you haven't applied anything that's prohibited, then you may be eligible to get certified right away. And you can definitely contact certifiers about this, let them know what it is that you've applied or what kind of records you have and see what that transition go. Okay, so we've talked about these materials. I've called them prohibited substances, right? So under regulations, there are some materials allowed and some that are prohibited. And there's different ways to if a material is allowed or prohibited for. One is the USDA national list of allowed substances. That is also codified in the Code of Federal Regulations, the organic regulations, and it is a generic list of substances. It's user-friendly. It is just a long list that you need to scroll through. It has its purpose, and people definitely use it. However, there is a more user-friendly list, the Organic Materials Review, or OMRI, as it's called. They have a very large database of reviewed materials and have a searchable list on their website, and it's much materials there. And if it has the OMRI seal, so if it's been, then it is allowed for organic production. Department of Agriculture, WSDA, also reviews materials a list as well. So there's a few different ways to find different materials that are allowed. I will say though that comprehensive. There are still other materials or prohibited that are not on these lists. So the thing that you can do if you're looking to apply a material is talk with a certifier. If you're currently let your certifier know before you apply a substance, and they'll review that material for you and let you know if it's allowed or not. If you're transitioning or looking to get certified, you can contact you're planning to work with and ask them about a material and for you as well. So use these lists, but also hire. So, all right, so let's say you're transition to an organic journey, right? So you gotten to know the regulations a little bit. You have got some material to know what's allowed and as you head towards certification, another really important step is what's called your organic system plan or your OSP. This is essentially your application for certification. And it is the plan that tells your certifier, is it that you're going to meet the organic regulation, going to be in compliance. And every has a little bit of a different OSP. The forms might be formatted a little, questions might be asked a little bit differently. So it's a choose your certifier before you begin the process of working. However, in general, all questions, no matter which certifier you're working with, fall under these primary components of an OSP. So things like you'll need to tell your certifier, what crops are you growing, stock are you producing, your fields and your acres, things about your buffers or your boundaries, materials that you use. You'll need to show documentation for all materials. Your plans for conservation and biodiversity, if you have any. Definitely information about your record keeping systems. That's really important for certification. All right, so as you're going along this journey of certification, of course, certification fees is one of the #1 questions. Unfortunately, I am not able to tell you what certification fees are today because they vary from higher, and they vary by your income. So it's based around the income of your operation for how much you will pay for your certification. And that's because, essentially the higher your income is, the bigger your operation is, and the more time it'll take and your reviewers to look through all of your plans and make plans. Some certifiers have a flat fee though as well. Oregon Tilt does not, and since Oregon Tilt is the one working up here, they are based, but there are other certifiers. They do ways with their fees. All certifiers are mandated their fee schedule public on their websites. So always go to a certifier website and look for their fee schedule, like fee tool thing that you can fee, and those will all just be available to the public. And then also about inspection costs. So there are certification fees and then that are inspection costs. And that is true for every certifier. So for Alaska in particular, since there is not located up here, that means that an inspector does need to fly up. If you certify with because everyone else here is certified with Oregon Tilt too, if you're then Oregon Tilt will plan to send at the same time as other operations to be inspected. So the inspector can go during their trip up here, and that fee can be used a little bit in that way. So it's one certifier that other operations in your area are with. And then also for another program I wanted to mention, it's not on the slide here, it's a cost share program. And this is to help people help reimburse certification fees. So this program is through, I believe, and it is a reimbursement program. So you need to pay your certification fees up front, and then they will reimburse you up to $750 or 75% of what you paid for certification. All right, so I'm gonna actual application process just a little bit here. What happens on the certification, the certifiers end of thing, and for you. So we've talked about how you need to select a certifier. You need to complete the OSP and submit that to the certifier. You need to pay fees at the time of submitting your application. And then the certifier will look over those forms for initial compliance with the regulations. So they'll just be making sure there's no big red flags that would make you non-compliant. And then as long as you pass that initial review, then they will schedule an inspection for you. So during the inspection, the auditor will want to look at your records. That is the biggest thing for inspections. You need to make sure you have records of when did you plant your crops and where did you plant them? When did you harvest them? Were there any other processing steps before you sold them? How much did you sell them for? How much did you? Those kinds of things. So they'll want to see records from sale to seed. It's called a traceback audit. And then they'll also need to go out and see your operation in person. So, see your fields, see the area where you're producing, see your buffers and your boundaries, all of that. All right. And so the inspector then writes up a report after they conduct that inspection, and they send that to the certifier. And then the certifier looks at that and your OSP and decides if you are in compliance with the organic regulations or not. If you are, then they will issue you a organic certificate at that time. And then every year, you will need to go through this process to a certain degree. So you can keep the same OSP on file with the certifier. You just need to provide updates every year, like updates to your crops, updates to your materials, what kind of seeds are you using, that kind of thing. And then you do need to have an inspection every year and pay certification fees every year. So that really walks us through the certification process. So I wanted to just briefly chat about some of the key organic principles for organic production. So what does it mean, to follow organic production practices? And I'm going to preface this with saying that these are all based around soil-based crops. I'm going to keep it. There's a lot more when you take in livestock, or there's also crops that do not grow in soil, like hydroponics and kelp, mariculture crops. We're going to hear from Marcos in a minute here about how you can grow crops without soil too. But just to keep it simple, these are basic principles for soil-based crops. So soil fertility and nutrient management is huge for organic production. I'm sure you all are probably already aware of this. It is really the baseline from which everything thrives. So it's the most important consideration for organic production. Per the organic standards, organic farmers must maintain or improve the physical, chemical, and biological condition of the soil and minimize erosion. So that is the standard that's in the regulations. So to meet this standard, you can use a lot of different types of practices. Some include like conservation tillage, where you minimize the cultivation of the soil. Using compost or composted manure is very common. Practices like cover crops and crop rotations are extremely common. Adding some nutrients to the soil, adding inputs is also very common. Things like even fish emulsion can be allowed. That is a time though when you need to make sure that those inputs are allowed for organic and that you have approval from your certifier to use them. So then seeds, annual seedlings, and planting stock. This is another really important consideration for organic. So per the regulations, seeds and planting stock must be organic unless you can show that they are not commercially available as organic at the scale that you need, in which case they can be untreated and non-GMO seeds and planting stock. Annual seedlings, so like the little starts that you get from a nursery, those do have to be certified organic.
Commercially available, or are you talking about in the state?
That's a good question.
I heard that actually research not you can't source seed. I'll say this instance, seed potato, something that are organic. and you're able to take an exception.
Okay. It could be that the certifier might allow that for Alaska in particular, because that's much more complicated to ship something up here at the scale that you would need it, right? I know in the lower 48, in general, that's not, because it's so easy to, transport things around. Marcos, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one of the challenges we have. And it is not just in the state, but within the region that we're talking about. So. Or at least for what we're doing.
I think it does.
They're different for the county, right? See, it's easier to transport.
Yeah, great. Well, I wanted to touch on pest, weed, and disease management as well. Of course, this is a huge area for organic production and all farming. But with organic production, there's more like smaller scale practices that need to happen all coming together to help prevent pests, weeds, and diseases. So organic regulations, organic farmers must maintain, wrong one. Let's see here. Organic farmers must prioritize management practices that prevent pests, weeds, and diseases. So the first line of defense here is prevention. You need to practice production that prevents pests, weeds, and diseases, right? And that might be really simple things like crop rotations can prevent diseases from staying in the soil. Simply cleaning up your crop at the end of the season, integrating some beneficial insects or birds or bats onto your property. It's some really simple things, but they all add up together to help prevent. And then, of course, prevention is not usually enough. You are very lucky if it is. And so there also needs to be some control methods integrated into these systems too. And control methods would look like, weeding, mechanical cultivation of your fields, mowing, livestock grazing. Those are just some examples of what a control method would look like. And then the last line of should be using allowed material. So that should only happen if you have an outbreak of some pest or a disease, or just really terrible weed on your farm. And then that's a time that you would go to one of those material that's allowed, get approval from your certifier, and then a good idea to document the problem that you're having. Your certifier might want to see the reason for why a material. And then lastly, I just wanted biodiversity and conservation. For the regulations, farmers implement production practices that maintain or improve the natural resources and biorestoration, including soil and water quality. It includes things like, taking care of your soil so that you're minimizing erosion, monitoring water quality depending on your source of where you're getting your water, using efficient water management practices like efficient irrigation practices, simple things like having wildlife safe fencing or riparian areas on your farm, kind of invasive weeds, all those kinds of things count. Certifier will, check to see if you're doing any of these kinds. Look for at least that you're doing a little bit, and the inspector might that you're doing those things as well in your farm. All right, so we're keeping it pretty high because we just don't have a lot of time to delve into the details. But before I move on to resources for organic, I just wanted to check and see if anyone has any questions. The certification process.
It's basically a version of the so there's no record of the trees. Certain trees on the ground. What do you do?
And is it a field that you have owned? So I guess it depends on who has been the owner of it. You have been the owner of it, yeah. So there's a good chance that you can just sign a form that says, yes, I have not applied any prohibited substances. And I verify that it is, free of anything and, you're sort of that. Yeah, a good question, to ask your certifier particular. They might have a little bit of particulars around what they're looking for there.
Are there, any templates out there for organic system plans?
Yes, definitely. So every certifier has those forms on their website, so you can also just go find them there. You can also see like, I'll talk. Here, I can go to the next slide here. So services also have some kind of like fake OSPs that you can go see how people might fill them out, especially ATRA in particular. They have tons of resources on certification, as well as the actual National Organic Program. They have some on their website too, that you go see how other farmers might fill it out. And that can also say that if you are interested in working with Oregon Tilth, they just developed a little video, or our applicant experience specialist. So he helps people with developing their OSPs for Oregon Tilth, and he developed a video that goes through each section of the OSP and what you should take into consideration there. It's like an hour and a half long. It's quite thorough, and it might be really helpful if you're just getting started for the first time.
You know how difficult it'd be to become a certification organization or to be a certified inspector under Oregon Tilth and all? Oh, thinking about that.
Yeah, I think it would be challenging at this time because of the number, the certified organic entities up here, since there's only, like 12 operations up here, right? That's not a full-time position. It's possible that Oregon Tilth does hire some contractor inspectors, and maybe they would hire someone for like really part-time so that they could just inspect the operations up here. I can't say for sure that would be an option, but it would be, I mean, it's like out of the year that it would take to inspect all of those, right? So it's a really small amount. Yeah.
Do you think that there is growing interest in Alaskan?
I think there's.
Conducting surveys winter on interest. How we're gonna get that from our membership, see if there's interest. Certification, because within the division of we have a few certification programs that aren't necessarily sustained position. I mean, we have our food safety auditors are provide a service. We are interested in the division of see if there's interest.
And I think we will get a lot of.
Yeah.
That's been a certification for their several operations. So that's a segment of the state. In that survey, there's a lot of.
Let me get your. So I think you kind of, again, we're working with top. Of what the needs are. Survey to see. And then create something that is the need. Okay, we. Want it.
Yes.
And I was gonna say. Palmer's that with a small. The overhead costs of was high, and also the marketable ability to say Oregon Tilth is not good.
Yeah.
And we want Alaska, and so it doesn't really pay. Not that there's not a lot of interest level, but it's just
I think
not.
you're gonna talk about barriers. I mean, I think just the distance. That people come up here, it's not like you can go to the neighboring state if they're expected. I mean, and time is money, and I think that's a huge barrier. Certified.
One of the Oregon Hill's website, and they're literally asking to pay for travel expenses. What it costs to fly something from Portland, Oregon.
For this transition of organic program, there's other facets to it to help. So it's not, the funding It's good, hopefully, a little bit of training, stuff like that, it's a bit for training. So it's something that we're very interested in, as you guys are culture, so.
Yeah.
Introduction. So, my name is Evie Whitten, and I'm working with Northwest Top on for mariculture certification. So you and I should definitely coordinate.
Okay, okay, got it.
And obviously for Flex that I'm Marcos and others. Just to kind of connect some of the dots.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Great. Well, I think that's a great segue into this program, so I can talk about it a little bit more. There's definitely some things happening in Alaska that this program is helping to fund, and we might see some changes coming in the future. So just some basic understanding of what TOPP is, the Transition to Organic Program. So it is a USDA funded initiative that's coming from the National Organic. And it is a national program, but as you can see in the map here, it is split into different regions. So there are 6 different regions across the country, and Alaska is in the Northwest region, as well with that are in the lower 48 there. And Oregon Tilth is taking on the lead for the, we have the cooperative agreement with the NOP, but then many different partners all across this Northwest region. Alaska, so as you've already heard from a couple of folks here, so that you all can develop these programs and choose the support ways that best fit your needs up here in this state. And then I'll just talk about some of the program areas that we are focusing on, and then when we move to our public sharing out time, would love to hear some other folks who are what they're doing with this as well. So one big part of TOPP is a mentorship program, and this are connecting certified organic farmers with are interested in getting certified. So this is farmer to farmer learning. We're providing a stipend for the mentors, and it is completely free of charge who are transitioning to organic. We do currently mentor up here in Alaska, and we would love to have more, so we can these in-person learning opportunities. And then we're also offering assistance. So this is more support for the of certification. So we will sit down with you virtually, because this will be coming from either Oregon or Washington. And we will work through with you. We will help with your record keeping systems, for an inspection, all of those kinds of things, and completely free of charge for folks who are looking to get. And then that is community building and more educational opportunities around organic and organic certification. So this could look days, workshops, webinars, conferences. For instance, this conference is one that we're helping to sponsor too. Just more funding going towards those kind of educational. And then another area is development. So in recognizing that with growing the number of organic producers in the country, of course, we need more folks to support them. So another focus, getting more people into the organic industry, getting to be a part of this industry and provide greater level. All right, so I'm going to put contact information up here. You're welcome to save that. You can reach out to me directly. That is my direct email there. And then we also have a new website. It's transition.org. I'll say right now it is kind of in development. It's a little bit sparse, but here it's going to be fully fledged out. Of course, the application will be on there, contact information will be on there, but then all of the events that TOPP is sponsoring around the country will be listed on there. So like there could be a webinar out in Maine that's on something like that, that might be relatable to a lot. And you might be able to access that virtual event that. There will also be a resource hub on there. We're doing an inventory of like all organic production sources across the country, and many of them this website, so that it's really like a one-stop find everything before getting certified. Any other questions about resources or certification? Time check. All right, we're doing okay on time. Any other questions with this one? Right now, okay, we'll certainly have more time for questions later. I am going to bring Marcos up here now. And like I said before, operating our organic kelp operation in the state, and he's here to talk through this, certification process with you all. It means to have certified organic kelp operation, those for being here in Alaska in particular. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Hannah. All of you for coming. It's an interesting process. I'll give you just a real summary of what we're doing. So we're based in Alaska. We are a species farm. You read that, and so we grow something. So we are a multi-species farm. We grow Saccharina. We've grown 2 other species so far. We're big on Island. We have 100-acre seaweed area that we have production. This year we put in an oyster farm, so we're cultivating oysters in the same location. We expect to have ideally starting middle to latter part of next year. So the seaweed component is organic certified, both at the farm level and processing and handling level. So Alaska grown, certified oysters and seaweed, and that part is that is really important to us, because like all of us, we think the Alaska brand is really as part of how we develop our branding and marketing. Certainly when we start moving these products outside of selling Alaskan products to Alaskans is a different conversation than selling Alaskan products to somebody in Los Angeles and other. I don't get that value. That's a summary of our operation. We have it. Feel free to let me know. And for the certification process, we started the certification process because, in particular, on the seaweed side, I felt like it was a really part of the tile. When you talk about very first slide, we talk what is organic and inputs and process and all of the things. I look at seaweed farming and it is, that's every one of those, everything that we do. There's no inputs, the water, it improves the area, right, in different ways. It is, there's no pesticides, no nutrients added, no other outside inclusions, and and in that way, really unlike most other agricultural activities. And water where we are, there's no human interaction. Nobody lives in the bay where the seaweed and oysters are cultivated. So, we thought, well, easy to certify because, we're the closer. Everything we're doing fits right within the country. But it wasn't so easy. We spent a considerable amount of time just and seaweed being certified as organic. Once we address that, you know, we thought, well, yeah, we probably should. What's the second? How do we find a certifier? Started with the number of national certifiers to try to find somebody that would. Oregon Tilt was the only one that for us, that was even willing to go into the process. And I could say they have been really collaborative through the process of trying to find we had to fit in square peg. Even though everything was, you know, fits the regulatory premise. How do we do that? So it took us to get through the OSP process. The Caesars. How do we fit the Caesars? And the fact that on the handling side, we don't have there isn't processing, there isn't a required asset. Because the analysis hasn't been done. They create our own HACCP plan and do our own HACCP analysis, try to figure out where are the critical that we're doing. And then, you know, we had our first inspection in 2021. Because that inspection occurs, have to be processing and harvesting to have that inspection. None of our 20 got our certification plan after the finished production. Or 2022 production was actually, you know, so it took a while. For us, the collaboration really was into the market. Yeah, help us talk through some.
Marcos, was the HACCP plan required as part of the certification? Or did you just?
HACCP is only the process. Yeah, so it's only the process. One of the ways that we dealt with the challenge of processing. See the processing of specific. The way and if we certification for handling, one of the ways to you have to get the facility the certification process. See the processing facility organic, which doesn't make any sense. Rational people, but they're not. There's no motivation. The way we got around on the processing that the runoff. So that way we can be certified and operate the facility. We could take that equipment and take it to another facility. It is but what the HACCP plan SOPs for sanitation, operation, cleanliness, inspection, and all. And that's what those were the necessary demonstrated tools, record keeping. And so that's what it has to be. I think that's structure was developed by the party. I'll be honest, it was largely industry practices because but that was a tool we used to have.
So I grow gourmet mushrooms and kind of like seaweed, the process is largely kind of the industry standard is kind of in line more so with organic practices, but I think there's obviously a lot more certified producers that are in that space, so I think we might have an easier time finding templates to go about it. I am curious though, from 2021 to 2022, once you had these certifications, sales side of things, did it make it? Did you feel like a lot of value was added to your products, or do you feel did it make getting interest easier because people felt like there was less in your product inherently with the organic certification, or how did that affect things?
Most of our sales are B2B sales for ingredients that are inclusions in other people's products. And because of that, you know, and if they are selling their product under an organic brand, you know, you get that,
Yeah.
it's a mandate, not a, you know, so.
Right, so you're not, you want.
It's a binary question, right? If
Right,
you want to sell to me,
you have to,
you have to have it. If
right.
you don't want
okay,
to sell to me, go find another market. And
Right,
so and I would say that mandate sales. They're the majority. So I would say that we would grow far less and sell far less kelp. Sure.
Is that annual inspection process pretty simple now? I know you said getting in the door was more challenging than you expected, but since you do check most of the boxes, how has that annual inspection process been?
It's actually not too bad. You know, the way the process works, you start early in the year, they want to do it when we're processing. Our harvest and processing period this year is a 2 week. End of April, 15th of May, that's our target. So we know when we have to do. So coordinating that, you know, one of our challenges is we do our processing in Ketchikan and our harvesting is done in. So you gotta coordinate one together. And just making sure that. So, we are still working to fact is making sure to track and have documents to track seed production, seed in the nursery to farm, out of farm, on the boat, plant in the box in the farm. And you know, and we don't have that many SKUs, process products. So it makes it pretty simple, but you know, it's on the chain is keeping. Yeah, we read this, but I'm not sure. Spreadsheet on Google, and, you know, people that are doing see, you know, put their information on spreadsheet. Comes out, it goes on the spreadsheet, and at the end, you've got a spreadsheet that tracks that.
Do you have any different logistical places?
What courses are now?
Oh, no. Yes. Did he do in Canada? What's your priorities?
So the answer is no. Yeah, there was another question.
When you harvest the kelp, if you're going to seed with that kelp, or if you're continue to grow the crops that portion.
There, it is possible to harvest part of the kelp, leave the rest of it. Continue to grow. That's not what we do, for two reasons. One is we've got to have a date certain, as part of it. Relates to some issues. Yeah, commercial fishing, you have some migration. You know, when we originally applied for it, it doesn't really. But the other challenge is, so most of our food, as you get later in the season, kelp prices and things like that. So it's in our interest harvest earlier before that pipeline starts to occur. So, yeah, it could be good for other uses.
I'm just wondering if it's just
No.
like your gathering, yeah.
The way the kelp industry works is you harvest the source, the reproductive material from wild stocks, take it to the nursery each year, incubate that in the nursery to create your juveniles. So every year you're taking new stock. And we harvest largely before.
I just have a quick question about the biofilms that Craig has, the herring, you know, like the kelp herring. How do you manage for the herring essentially, not
Here,
baking essentially?
every year, we sit there and wait while the hearings point occurs. Hoping they pass it. That's, no, the first year, we had a massive response. Huge. And the can't touch the company. Small hatch, we can't touch it. It creates this founding of kelp. The herring eggs from the kelp, take nutrients, start to deteriorate, and everything. We have not seen subsequent years, and where we were, pretty surprising. We saw the herring in there, because there had not, APFG had not reported spawning in 70 years of travel. So I called the area. I said, hey, Bob, we got herrings. How did that I knew what I was talking until I sent him a photo. Oh, there it is. It was on the flip side. It was so full, it was rows of kelp with a quarter-inch of herring eggs. First year of production, that was exactly that. And coat was pretty special. There's nothing. We did after this. I did do some research on what would be work peers or sound and different things. None of that was effective. Small ones, there's much could be. We just pray. That's our solution.
This is applicable to you because of the nature of your business, but some market research. So if you go to Natural Pantry here and look at Alaska grown, non-organic, right next to it, the price is pretty comparable. So I'm just curious if there is growing organic and getting a price of, you know, for the Alaska grown plus organic. I'm just kind of curious if the market's there for by end product. Yeah.
So say, I think instead of as it is, it's been something they all know has been available.
I've heard a lot of growers grow organically and
For the organic community, but I can speak for just our level. But I know in the past, our farmers, when they sell retail, they would get a product in this to allow to give them what they cost. So they're getting like, so they're the shipping. You know, here, so they're maybe farmers. Sell these stores and certainly paying for that. Yeah, so that's kind of how it was. So it is, but yeah, but I think maybe why it's kind of hard for people, our farmers.
And I would say that one is, it depends on what markets you're selling into. You know, for us, it's the difference between. So that's
right, yeah.
right, even if there's not, you know, it may not be, if I would sell a kelp that is not certified organic, and I'm getting 10% organic certified.
Right.
We'll find everything that in life, where we are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that has to do with in-state versus out-of-state.
I think
markets,
that's a big factor.
Yeah.
That's where the market is.
If you're selling into markets where, you know, where you're selling sprouts or things like that, where organic certification is predicate to getting on the shelf.
Right.
You know, in many of those places, that's a different assessment. So, it's part of organic, Indian certified, yeah.
And that experience just on mushrooms. You're face to face with somebody, the Alaska grown certification is very much like kind of gives the same element of trust that I think a lot of people are like that the organic certification would do.
Yeah.
But as we scale, we're looking at, okay, is this organic certification, if I'm not in the farmer's market, this is the way to convey that we're, you know, operating under practice, like best practices and stuff. So that's kind of where we're looking at it. I don't think small scale is super relevant. I don't think it is. And I think it's, people recognize with a lot of things that the Alaskan grown is pretty good out here. And you're doing from small scale, no one's accusing you of San Antonio, you know. They're doing all, you know, so they sell where the market is that. I think that we're looking at that is part of our.
And who you're trying to sell to? I mean, I know
Right.
things like sustainability certifications. Value to, how do you demonstrate to them that you're doing the right thing?
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's really about, for those that don't know what's going on. Demonstrates. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for all these great questions. I mean, Marcos is still gonna be around and available to chat for sure. So I just want to give us about 20 minutes or so. I mean, we've already been having a conversation, but I just want to continue this conversation with some time to think about coming from you all and your perspectives from Alaska on these three topics in particular. And also, we want to hear from some of our top partners on the work that they're doing in these areas of how they're looking at organic certification moving forward in the state. And, you know, what might be some of the barriers and how are they going to help address those as well. So I'm going to have Evie Witten come up and just talk about a needs assessment that she's doing with organic certification with Kelp to start us off. But you all can start thinking about these questions, and if there's anything that you would like to share with us, the time to really give your ideas, I could bring your ideas back to our TOPP team, and then we also have, you know, partners from Alaskan too, and we can certainly take any of your ideas, any of your thoughts on this subject, and think about how we can move forward with those. Evie, you want to come chat for just a few minutes? Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. As Hannah said, my name is Evie Witten. I work with a small group called Regeneration North, based here in Alaska. And we work on climate and food system related challenges, and mostly through applied research and other collaborative projects. And I also, wearing another hat, I am also a kelp farmer. I have a very small operation in Kachemak Bay, very different scale, really at the other end of the spectrum from Marcos. And several of my projects under Regeneration North right now are kelp related. And one of them is I'm working with Northwest TOPP on a needs assessment for organic certification for Alaska kelp. And we are in the early stages of this process. And some of you, I think, might have been in the room when we were talking about kelp production in the state yesterday. And I don't know that we need to pull up those slides, but I can just kind of go over what I covered yesterday. But we're in the early stages of this needs assessment, and the the initial objectives kind of mirrored very much what you have up here, Hannah. You know, what are the benefits? What are the needs? Do we have of kelp growers in the state that are interested in organic certification? And took this project with Northwest Top in part because we knew the answer was yeah, probably, but we didn't know to what degree. But so we were looking at, you know, what are the needs, what are the benefits, what are the barriers, how might this roll forward in kelp mariculture? And in the very early stages of this process, in part talking with Marcos and Lexa and others who are in the state, it became very apparent right out of the chute that, yeah, really all of the larger markets for kelp right now in the state require organic certification, and that's really where the whole industry is headed. We do have some smaller buyers who don't require it. And you know, that's where a farm like mine is selling into right now, but it's one of these, we know Alaska, you know, it's kind of one of these things where Alaska brand. But even they're selling outside. I'm talking in particular one company called Daybreak Seaweed that really buys only from Alaska. They sell in 150 or so retail outlets out of state. And even they are saying, well, it'd be really great if you did get certified. And so that's the trajectory. One of the things that we're doing right now with this needs assessment in the state, taking a little bit of a step back, given that right out of the chute, we know as we need, most of the industry is going to need to want to get organic. One of the things that came forward in these initial discussions, you know, looking at the challenges and the experience that you had, Mark, there are a few other farmers who are in the process of certifying farmers with organic, with Oregon Tel. And one of the things that became, this is so new, organic certification for kelp. Are some producers in Maine who have gone through the process and are in the process with a certifier there. MOFGA, Maine Organic Farmers and Growers. And one of the things that became apparent is that industry within the US, we need to make sure that the certifiers are all and that the farmers are talking to each other and that we have product expectations that are very clear from the beginning across the board nationally. So one of the things we're doing right now is stepping back and working with Northwest Top USDA to start a process of a national working group and a process of figuring out what that should look like across the board. So bringing in people from other states, bringing in all the certifiers working on kelp mariculture across the country. So that's something I need to talk with you about, Marcos. And the needs assessment for Alaska will also carry on. And I think one of the, you know, kind of answered the first question. Now we're really into the barriers. We've answered some of that as well, but I think digging deeper on that, really figuring out what it looks like, especially at for kelp. Very much mirrors land-based agriculture, right? You've got larger farms and you've got farms. The big picture.
Yeah, one of the things that I think would be interesting, part of the process that we've had a challenge with is, you know, explaining just the biology to certifiers so they understand why it works instead of starting with no, let's start with everything that we're doing is the business, right?
Yeah.
Get them to understand biology of the process and that, because I think those are the most complicated questions. The processing and handling side, you know, it's that part, that part, and it's a separate process and it's a separate, it's a separate FP, right? And by the way, something I didn't talk about is that for the reimbursement program, you get reimbursed for each certification. So handling gets a reimbursement, farm gets a reimbursement. So because they're separate, each one is eligible. So
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's really a big part. Thank you for that, Marcos. That's really a big part of what this national working group is going to address is it's going to be a discussion, where we have hopefully you and Lexa on this national working group, and it's a discussion with the certifiers, and the overall, entity that the certifiers, work with, nationally to make sure that there's this understanding, and that the protocols that they're using, that different certifying bodies are using, are all based on that basic understanding of the biology and the process, like the different categories. I think we can answer each one of those questions of what it looks like. It's just different.
Processes, they have to fill out forms for terrestrial certification. Box, you're just going NA on this form, and there's really nothing that even applies to totally kelp in the first place. So just coming up with a form that's applicable to apply, I mean, that's.
Alexa and her family's farm, you have also gone through.
So yeah, it was weird. Our buyer wanted organic certification, so they paid for it, and this is something I wasn't aware of, is that our farm was not certified organic, just the crop. A little bit mad because we were under the impression that their farm was being certified. Like, fine, that sounds great. And then we ownership of the certification. Absolutely not. It was the crop for 1 year. And I still haven't gotten a straight answer back from Oregon. Everything seems super shady about it. So I just thought that was weird. Something that caught us off guard, but we're in the process.
So it's not a pilot stage, the certification.
It feels like it.
Well, it's not a pilot program.
I mean,
It's-
it's gonna get the certification, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a.
it's approved under you that kelp mariculture can be a. And it's just that we're realizing through this needs assessment in Alaska that it is so new that maybe it's not well understood. Questions like Alexa's, I think in particular are really important. I
Yeah.
did get a little bit of insight into that after asking some questions, and it is a, and Connie, you can probably answer this better than I can, but my understanding when I asked the question was that can happen in land-based agriculture as well, that a crop can have certification for a certain amount of time. I'm not sure I understand it either because it's that.
Oh, yeah, we did a whole thing, just like you're certified.
Right.
farms.
I'm not saying, but I'm going back to the pilot, like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not certified, the USDA has, I know that National Organic Programs doesn't have necessarily USDA oversight. Like when I'm looking at it from like a food safety, audit perspective, they have pilot programs for state aquaponics, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so they kind of like a pretty, they know that what their current checklists are, don't fit that, right?
Yeah.
So they're working through that, and not that we can't do here, we don't, farm fish is not allowed, so. That is a pilot program for USDA. You still have to meet these criteria, very specific. It's developed for that particular industry. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's kind of almost like that. Yeah.
It does sound like it. I haven't heard that terminology. No one has applied that terminology
Yeah.
yet. And this is, sorry, I don't mean this to be a pun. It kind of arose organic. It came up through like, oh, we've got a potential. We don't have, like, Alexa needs to understand that, right? Or any other farmer does too. And
We haven't need, but we haven't truly evaluated it yet, like all the ins and outs of that. There's a need for the organic certification for it, just like the food safety audits for aquaponics. So like, okay, well, we can do this. This is how we're gonna do it for pilot program for net.
yeah,
That's kind of how I
Yeah.
interpret it.
and I think for kelp, it's one of those, it's already happening.
Yeah.
But let's make sure that that it's happening very consistently across the country and everyone has the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm surrounded with kelp farmers here. I'm a dryland farmer from Delta. And I will tell you that I'm fully behind the biodiversity aspects of the organic program. But I will also tell you that I could never pencil out and keep the lights on without some synthetic fertilizer.
Yes.
it ain't gonna work. And the other thing is, yes, I'm developing crops. If you'd have heard my potato program last night, you've probably seen, but I'm working toward crops that are healthy enough that they resist pests and they resist diseases. But I will never guarantee you that I would never have to use an herbicide. So I like the word pilot program, but I don't see it in DA regulation for organic certification. And so I would just say that, that is a barrier to the organic certification in Alaska. And, I don't know if there are any ideas out there for supporting the future of that certification for guys like me out there trying to raise barley and potatoes and so on without fertilizer and without any form of herbicide.
I know some rhodiola, I know a person who's growing rhodiola, but that's like an area where organic is of interest, it's like it's much price, right? And so I know somebody who's cleared ground, who says they can't be organic, they have to amend their soils, fertilizers, and then they're gonna wait 3 years. And see, that's kind of their mindsets, but again, is that gonna work? Are they gonna constantly allow for these amendments, and so they're rhodiola thrive and all that? I'm running first. That was the plan. This person, and I was like, okay.
I know, fertilize, right? Like, I would say for kelp, no, but we can probably move on from kelp, but I think we have the same situation going for seed production. That's the one area that when you're producing seed in the hatchery, there's certain things you need to, if you get certain marine organisms taking up shop because you're in seawater, there are certain things you need to use to produce your seed, and you don't want to promise you're never going to do it.
Exactly. I had one thing that I want to bring, because I don't think it's any hydroponic here, but I know that there's more and more people going to year-round production in Alaska for hydroponics. So what are the opportunities for organic certification for these, for the I know in the past it hasn't been something that can be organic.
I think it's just really hard to manage your nutrients organically because you get like some crazy funk going on. I've explored it a little bit, but yeah, I think it's like really challenging because it just your nutrient solution turns into a slime with using organic nutrients. So it just takes a lot of maintenance.
So I guess if there are any, we're not using those organic nutrients, right?
Yep.
So has there been some evaluation of that as far as how?
Yeah, I'm not too knowledgeable of organic and hydroponics. If anyone else is welcome to speak up. I can say that certified and are certifiable. Some people across the country who have it, at least work.
I think there's a talk later today actually on seeing nutrients using bacteria.
Yeah, there's a guy. Christian said.
Oh.
There's-
Sustainable hydroponics. Okay.
Well, I don't know if the fires also won't like as part of like managing soils part of the certification.
Organic.
I'm from Northeast and they have like a real organic project and they will not certify hydroponic. Soil health is a big part of it. And soil.
Yeah, so USDA organic certification will certify hydroponics, but there is additional certifications that like real organic or regenerative, and some of them.
How does certification deal with like manure based nutrient additives? Like if you're gonna do something, how far to track that? Because I think like up here, if you're chicken manure or something, like table scraps, like obviously you couldn't ever certify that the chicken is only eating organic scraps or whatever, like, at what point is that considered a, okay, clean break, we're considering this a viable organic input that could be used versus,
Yeah.
kind of weeds, but like.
Yes, yes, so there's some specificities around that, of course, as regulations like to do. So I think in general, you can use livestock and manure. It does not have to be certified organic, the livestock. There are certain time periods that you can apply it with certain different types of crops. So if your crop touches the ground in any way, like growing leafy green, growing tomatoes, something like that, apply the manure 120 days. If your crop does not touch the ground, then you can apply it 90 days before harvest. And then if you're creating compost, there's some specifications, and I don't have them all memorized around like certain temperatures that need, and there's like a certain number of turns you have to do with it, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Just going off that, some herbicides can carry over in the manure, even in the compost. So, I mean, I'm assuming you would know if you're getting your manure from, but knowing what they spray or where they get their food from, because it can.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to know and learn a little bit about their practices. Yeah.
I actually had that question come up this morning about using great compost for food waste. Using that as nutrients, organic certification that were involved with fruits and vegetables, whatever, or not organic certified. The waste is created. Does that mean you can't use that or get that, or that compost once it's composted?
Right, so the compost does not have to be certified organic, it just needs to have met some of these like regular temperature and some things like that to at least help decrease any of those like pesticides or herbicides, fertilizers that might be in there. Yeah.
Weed seed also.
Yeah.
The temperature is very
Yeah.
important. To
Right.
carry over
Right.
for weeds.
Yeah, as a farmer. Compost that won't just cover your land and
Yeah,
weeds,
that's a big
yes,
problem.
definitely. Yes, yeah. Okay, great. Well, I know we just have a few minutes left. Was there any last ideas that anyone wanted to share, especially moving forward, thinking about the top funding and how that might support organic certification up here? And if not, that's totally fine. Yes.
I kind of just wanted to ask for those organic farmers, like, have you found you need to have operations at a minimum scale just to cover your expenses for the certification, the travel?
And I mean, we don't make it currently. We're gonna have resources with other farmers locally to get the inspectors to come yet, because I mean, you have to pay for around fare, per diem, lodging, for that individual, $70 an hour rate fee. Farms, I just can't do it, and that's gonna be like $3,000. 150,000 pounds of kelp doesn't make sense. So we have to pool our resources collectively and get more folks involved in the process locally, and then spread that cost out because it's outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Is there a grower register for like any way that everyone's?
So Oregon talked to them, and was like, we're gonna try to schedule other people in state one vacation going, so we can have initial certification, then your recertifications all at the same time, so you can fly that one person up at once, like in the South Central region. So they're making moves as a company. But
Is there any way for all growers to be?
so I mean, the Alaskan Agricultural Alliance, it's something that they would start organizing all of us and share with resources.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that's definitely, like, there are recommendations that's gonna come out of this season. And it's entities, and I think for land-based agriculture,
it could not be that difficult to have that kind of communication. Speak now, working with the Division of Agriculture, we have other project programs such as working with 16. We try to saying, we try to do activities, plan activities where other activities are. Right? So it's kind of coordination. Our problems for people. On other certifications, not just say agriculture. I think you're lucky that you have just right there, like it sounds like it's either processing, right? Or and that could be a challenge. It's like land, like on farming land, but you're doing your thing. So like the advantage of having a person that are probably hopefully at the same time. Hopefully it's not boring.
Always have a-
Not bad. Yeah, and so could be a challenge.
Yeah.
And
No,
same with
it's the
Prince of
last
Wales,
They were so. Right, so if somebody comes to certified markets, I mean.
Yeah.
Miles away, it's still. And regionally, you have to report. Southeast, South Central, maybe the Kodiak pollution. Like, it's really difficult. It has to be challenging.
Actually, Portland, Oregon, is closer to education.
Yeah,
Way off there.
the masters of coordinated activities out of my office. Somewhere for actually can't like a 3 day, for us. If you can just get there in 2 days.
You guys pick that.
Really curious.
Yeah.
All right, well. Time, folks.
I think it is.
You guys.
If you have questions about certification, I will be upstairs for the rest of today. You're welcome to come stop by and take your questions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.